24 years ago, it was about just offering great medical coverage and maybe dental coverage and a good retirement account. And we did that. We did that with excellence. We still do that with excellence today. But the broad range as to what that means to take care of your employee through employee benefits has dramatically changed.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Healthy Savings. My name is Sasha Gribov. I'm your host. I'm the co-founder of Miu Health. Today we're joined by Celeste Parker, who's the Benefits and Relocation Director at Costco. Celeste, thank you for being on. We're really excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So we always kick this off just by covering background and basics. I'd love to learn about you, how you got into this role, how you initially got to Costco. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I started with Costco 24 years ago. Really, it was supposed to be a job that would just help me get through college. I was going to college for HR management. And Costco does that really good. They take care of their employees, even their frontline workers. So it was a great place to help me get through college. And once I was done with that, I landed a job here within the HR department with Costco, and it ended up being employee benefits. And I just, throughout the years, have fallen in love with the employee benefits side of HR and decided to stay with that, and did everything from clerical work, helped supervise and manage the team, and now I'm directing the program.
And was it always benefits, or did you have some roles in between where you jumped into, totally random other HR functions for some time and then came back?
Yeah. So that's funny that you asked, because when I went to college, it wasn't for employee benefits. It was for all of HR. So I learned everything. And I came into employee benefits with the motive to move around and learn about all the other aspects that HR had to offer. And employee benefits, as anyone who's listening to this knows, it changes. We get enough diversity and variation in what we have to do, what we have to focus on, how we have to go about solving problems just within employee benefits. So it's kept me alive for sure.
And how has it changed over that time period? I mean, I'm guessing employee benefits is very, very different today versus what it was when you first signed up and dug in.
Yeah. 24 years ago, it was about just offering great medical coverage and maybe dental coverage and a good retirement account. And we did that. We did that with excellence. We still do that with excellence today. But the broad range as to what that means to take care of your employee through employee benefits has dramatically changed. So, yes, we still have to have a great medical plan, good dental coverage. We still offer very generous 401k plan, but we have to make sure that our employees' emotional well-being is taken care of as well. And not only do we have to make sure that we're offering great benefits to touch on all areas of well-being, whether that be physical, emotional, financial, social, but we also have to make sure that our employees are actually using those benefits. So yeah, we can sit here, we can invest in the time and the money to offer great benefits, but if our employees aren't using it, that doesn't really serve our purpose, right? We really, truly want to take care of our employees. And the way we do that is by making sure we're offering benefits that can help with their holistic well-being. And if they're not aware of those programs, if they don't understand those programs, if they don't use them, then we're doing it all for naught. So I think that's how it's really changed. It's not just about offering them, but it's making sure that your employees understand them and actually use them.
How do you guys do that? Because that's kind of like the $1 million question, and very, very few folks have figured out a formula that works. And from our conversations before, it sounds like you guys have, which is awesome. So how do you even begin to solve that problem?
Yeah. So when I explain my actual responsibilities and duties, I would say 50% of what myself and my team are doing is trying to successfully communicate the benefits. That's half the battle right there. And I wouldn't say that we've mastered it. As soon as we find something that works, that's great, but it doesn't last forever. We have to constantly be changing how we're communicating, keep it fresh, keep it diverse, because that one way might have worked for this particular demographic, but it's not going to work for the other. And our workforce is constantly changing. So we never rest on our laurels, for sure. I think a few lessons we've learned throughout the years of generally what works well and what doesn't is really think like your employees. And I'm not talking about any employees with any company, but your employees. Think how they think and what matters to them. Get interview them, talk to them. We have a couple people on our team. In fact, most of the people on our team, they used to work at a building. They used to push carts, and that's brilliant. That's a great way to understand how do we talk to our employees, what's going to resonate with them. We also try to not overwhelm them. So we have a lot of suppliers. We love them all. But having all of them send emails, mailers with a different tone, a different message, a different voice, that's not helpful. So we keep it all under one umbrella. Yeah, it's more work to us and our communications team, but it goes a long way. It really helps our employees trust the source that they're getting their information from. It's the same tone. It's aligned with their culture. And we've seen a really good open rate, engagement rate, and consistency. We're definitely a brand that likes consistency, and we feel like we can achieve excellence as long as we stay consistent and aligned with our culture.
Have there been any channels that have been more effective or less effective for you guys over the years? Like, do you find a manager or a store manager speaking to the team to be like the significantly more effective than a weekly email, or how does that break down for you?
Yeah. So I think that's going back to the diverse population that we're trying to serve, right? We have some employees that are totally good with emails. That's their jam. They're going to look at that when we send them, as long as we don't send them too much. We have some employees that want text and only text. And some employees, we have a very robust, meaningful, authentic, I would say, open door policy. So if you're having any issue, you can go to any member of any leadership and talk to them about it. And our employees take that seriously. So they'll go to their management, their leadership about maybe a problem that they're having personally, maybe at home or with their health. And so keeping our leadership aware of our benefit programs, knowing that there's a system, a support group that can help them, that goes a long way because then they can route them. And of course, we use our monthly employee magazine. We use every single engine that we can think of. We monitor that, and all of them have a great amount of success. But I think of all of those, to answer your question, what's one that we couldn't live without? Maybe that's a better way of phrasing that question. I would say getting our leadership involved. If they weren't aware of the amazing benefit programs we have, that would probably make a huge impact in our employees being aware of what they have available to them.
As you think about getting leadership involved, is it all managers or is it like higher level leadership? Like what do you see being more effective? Is it like my direct boss knows the thing and can help me with a thing going on at home? Or is it the person running the store or the person from corporate who comes in and talks about it? Or is there no difference?
Yeah, no difference. And that's really goes back to our open door policy. I'm a director, but I can have an employee at the warehouse, so not even here at the home office or in HR, and they could be a stalker, an AM stalker, right? Stocks the shelves in the morning before our buildings open up, and they can call me directly. Like, that's an option. We really stress to our leadership to make the open door policy known and really promote it, and not just by saying it, but by actions and by body language and demeanor. So we hope that employees feel comfortable going to their direct supervision. But if for some reason they don't, they always have the option of going, the level up, 3 levels up, whatever they feel comfortable with, to try and get help with whatever it is that they're needing help with.
That's terrific. As you kind of look back over the years when you've introduced new things, has there been anything that stood out to you as you add a thing and, oh my God, the response is so crazy positive and engaged that you can't remember life without it?
Yeah.
Whether that's, mental health or diabetes or something totally different. Like what have been the things that have been total, like, before and then after?
Oh, yeah. And it cracks me up because I've been doing this for 2.5, decades, and still to this day, we'll promote a new program or have a message go out, and the popularity of it is off the charts. And I wouldn't have been able to predict that. So I think the latest one, a good example, is a GI program to help with GI issues. It's a provider that our carrier contracted with. We didn't make a big deal out of it. We're like, hey, it's covered to get testing and then get coaching to kind of really hone in on what exactly is causing your GI issues. And without any effort, the participation has skyrocketed. And when we think about it, that makes sense because our number one spend for ER visits is because of GI issues, right? So that tells us that either A, our employees are getting diagnosed and not proper treatment, or they're not getting diagnosed. Either way, they're landing in the ER. But yeah, that was surprising to see how many have already enrolled without us doing any heavy promotion. I think another one that comes to mind is we have a partner that offers coaching for MSK issues, diabetes, and hypertension. And we started with them, like a decade ago. And we did just diabetes. And then we did MSK, and now we're doing hypertension. Hypertension is off the charts. And that makes sense because more of our hypertension is a more common thing. There's a ton of individuals battling hypertension. And so if I had to do it all over again, I would have started with that, So yeah, those are a couple that I think about.
Fascinating. I would never have guessed that, like, the condition specific ones lead to that kind of really strong response. Like, it makes sense. People have this stuff, and especially GI, like, could take a year to get into a gastroenterologist. Like, I've had to go to a GI doc and scheduled it for like 10 months out at a great local system. So that makes a ton of sense. How does the philosophy that you guys have around benefits impact both the decisions that you guys make and also how you go about bringing them about? Like, if I remember from our conversation before, you don't have a willy-nilly approach where you just say, okay, great, what's the coolest thing that we've seen, and like go decide. You have a pretty strong, if I understood it correctly, foundational belief in, like, here's how we do things.
Yeah. We everything we do, we want to make sure that it's aligned with our culture and our way of doing business. So for example, if you go into a Costco warehouse, we don't sell everything. We're selective as to what we sell, but what we sell is of the highest quality and the best possible price. And so we do that. We incorporate that into the employee benefits program. So we don't offer every new bell and whistle. We're very selective as to what we're going to provide to our employees. And what we do, it has to be the best experience, the best outcomes. It has to make sense. It has to actually improve their health, and not just because it's popular or high demand. And so it's really, in that regard, very aligned with how we run our business operationally. We decide what are we even going to explore of what to possibly change in our benefits program. We have this 7-month process every year where we look at claim data, utilization of our programs, feedback directly from our employees. We take that seriously, and we look at all those things and think, okay, what's going to be the most valuable without making it to where our employees have to spend a ton more to have benefits, because that's not what we want to do either. Just like with our membership, we're always, with our Costco membership, we're always trying to find ways to make it valuable, more valuable, without every year increasing the membership fee. Like that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it to where we are always researching and exploring ways to make this a more effective, more valuable program for our employees. So every year, hopefully it gets easier and easier for them to maintain well-being for them and their families.
As you go and kind of think about those strategic decisions now and look at your claims data now, what are the things that are starting to pop up that weren't popping up in the past that are kind of making you say, hey, we need to start considering this problem or that problem? Or is it continuing to evolve, or do you feel like you've kind of covered most of the key stuff over the past few years?
It's definitely evolved, right? I think like with any other employer, we saw that increase, the demand for that in 2020. And that really made us rethink, how are we delivering the support to our employees? Is it valuable? Is it effective? Is it doing what it should? And since then, every year our claims increase. But that's what should happen, right? We're not into that trying to save money. We want to make sure that our employees understand that there's support out there, meaningful support. And we want them to use that. So, we talk about breaking the stigma all the time with emotional health. Well, what's going to happen if you successfully do that is, yes, your EAP is going to go up. Your mental health claims will go up, utilization. And that's exactly what we want to see. So, we have an EAP utilization that's unheard of, 20%, when most other employers are looking at less than 10%.
I've heard like 2 or 3%.
Yeah. Yeah, ours is 20%. And I think the lowest I've ever seen it since I started on this team was 15%. And again, it goes back to, it's not just telling the employees about it and getting them to depend on it for support, getting our leadership. They need to understand how holistically this program can help them help employees and help employees and use it. And they most definitely do. So it's letting employees know there's this great program out there. It really is going to help you. And letting their management know, the ones who are seeing them and talking to them every single day.
Your point about the claims is really interesting, because just because something's not showing up in claims doesn't mean the problem's not there, right? Like, you don't have a small mental health problem when you have small mental health claims. You just have a bunch of cash pay going on that doesn't show up in your claims, or a bunch of people that could end up in much more serious problems in the future. I had a similar conversation with a much smaller employer, but a similar type of workforce. I think there were like 15,000 employees, a lot of folks that work in supply chain and logistics. And they had built some really nifty algorithms that sat on top of their claims data. And his point to me was most of the value we found was from the stuff that wasn't showing up in the claims. So it was like, it was looking for the gaps in there and saying, okay, well, what does that tell us? Like, someone's not picking up their heart medication. Someone had a one-time diagnosis for hypertension, and then it's empty. It's silent. Like, we got to do something about that. And I thought that was a really interesting point, because honestly, we hadn't built our systems to think like that, and we've had to go and adjust it because it's huge.
I think another good example is, okay, so since 2020, year after year, we see an increase in our mental health claims. But what we've also seen, ever since we've seen an increase in mental health claims, is a decrease in our suicide rates amongst our population. And that's also aligned with how much we're talking about suicide awareness and prevention. That was a taboo thing to talk about before 2020. And so we started talking about it, calling it what it is, and telling them how they could get support on a frequent basis. And ever since we started doing that, yeah, we've seen a decrease in that amongst our population. So, yeah, having an increase in claims, depending on the situation, isn't necessarily a bad thing.
That's incredible. Just like, I haven't talked to other folks that actively track suicide rate and go and use that to talk about and drive programs, but a decrease in that is literally life-saving, like, and much more directly life-saving than adding this new benefit or that new benefit. Like, that's keeping people alive. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. And also training your teams on how to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you guys handle geographic diversity? Because healthcare is so local, right? And maybe some of the point solution apps, those can handle anyone nationwide, at least in the US. But, different folks are going to be at different stores that are going to have different health systems. Is that ever a thing you guys need to deal with and look at the data and try to figure out? Or, with a national carrier, do you feel like you're pretty well covered?
What we offer, we try to make it consistent amongst all our US locations. Because to be quite honest, communicating benefit programs with smaller groups and having to change that amongst many different groups, that gets pretty complicated. And the smoother you can communicate programs, the better, because then you can do it, more frequently in a more consistent manner. However, what we do track on a regional, sometimes state basis, is utilization, right? So what we're starting to look at is what region is using the ER more. What region isn't getting their preventive care? What region has higher cancer rates? And we're starting to get, reporting out to those regions, because if they're going to invest and promote locally any programs or have messaging to their employees, we want to make sure that it's meaningful and it makes sense for their population. So that's something that we're starting to do. We've been looking at how our employees behave nationally forever, but now we're starting to really hone in on locally, with the regions and how are they behaving. Like, we have a region, their preventive care is the lowest amongst any area, but their cancer rate is higher than any area, which kind of makes sense, right? So we're crafting up reporting to give to their leadership so they can help us communicate the importance of getting their cancer screenings done.
When you see those kinds of things in the data, how much do you think is driven? And I realized there's probably no real way to answer this until like you dig super, super deep. But I just wonder how much is driven by, hey, this is just this region of the country. like there's less health systems and there's more food deserts, etc., versus things that you can impact more directly, a more engaged leadership team, better communication, etc.
And that's a really good question because a lot of it's cultural stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
We have a particular state where they don't get much of anything done. They don't go to counseling. They don't get the preventive care. They only go when they're, actively ill. And, in exploring that, it's a cultural thing. We definitely look to make sure that this isn't a lack of healthcare support system. Because if that's the case, then we need to fix for that. We can solve for that, right? If there's not enough providers, yeah, well, then maybe they need to be out of network. Maybe we need to free them up to be able to go to anybody they need to. When we see these things, it's always interesting. We're like, wow, they have more doctors than any other state, any other area. Why would they do that? Is it because they're busier? Is it because culturally that's just not acceptable to go and see your doctor when, on a preventive cases, So yeah, we look at those things, and we recognize, that there's some things that we can control and maybe others that we can't. But yeah, definitely those are circumstantials that can definitely impact why employees are behaving a certain way.
Makes sense. And then as you think about the future, you've seen this space evolve over the last 2.5 decades. What do you think comes next? Is it more, are we going to get way deeper with specific solutions for people with specific diagnoses? Like 10 years from now, are we not going to be talking about a GI solution being new, but I don't know, Crohn's solution or, whatever's the next level deeper? Do you think data and technology play a bigger role, or do you think it's back to the basics and you take care of your people and you teach them how to use this stuff that's in front of them?
That's a loaded question. If I had a crystal ball, I think AI is going to change quite a bit. And not just like, it'll do better with claims processing, our neck of the woods. But I think how it's going to change the healthcare world is a lot of the things that we miss and we're lacking in the industry. I think AI will probably fill that void. And that could be a scary thing because then you think, oh no, what about job security? What about the humans that do these things? I don't think we'll ever run out of things for humans to do. I think, little things like when you call to schedule an appointment, you're not having to depend on a live operator being there. You're not having to depend on, the billing system, taking time to get the bill, hash it out, humanize. I think all of those things are going to change so then we can focus more on the stuff that, AI can't help out with. So I think that's going to evolve quite a bit. Like I was at a conference and they were talking about how radiologists, what they do today, that won't be needed in 10 years. And so what does that look like, right? And in my ideal world, AI takes into play and it reduces the cost, right? Or makes, at the very least, makes treatment more effective, right? It can determine what type of cancer treatment is actually appropriate for you instead of trial and error kind of stuff. So I would predict that. I unfortunately don't see any end in the challenge of trying to educate employees what they have. It's going to be a constant evolving fluid thing because that's human, right? That's human against human, trying to communicate that and get them to be aware, giving them the information when they actually need it. It's just not really in our nature to act too proactively, especially with things that we don't think are important, And so when someone has a busy schedule, they are, career focused, they have their family, they have this life, trying to tell them how important it is to be proactive about their care. That's going to continue to be a challenge. And we'll have to continue to evolve with that, especially with the new workforce. Every 10 years, it changes, right? So those are things that I see changing and maybe staying the same.
Totally agree. Well, Celeste, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Healthy Savings by Milu Health. If you would like more information about any of the topics you have heard today, we would love for you to get in contact with us. Find us on the web at miluhealth.com.